Months go by and I get a lawyer, and the lawyer's $600 an hour. And I'm thinking, how do I afford this? On 30 grand a year, do I trade up my children so that I can be financially okay? At this rate, my children are going to be eating the bricks on the wall. So I got rid of my lawyer, and then I decided I'm going to deal with all my legal proceedings. My uncle looked at me and he said, you know, Naomi, you had apples, red apples and green apples, and your husband just wanted oranges. I faced his team of lawyers and barristers. I didn't have any legal jargon, but I presented the facts to the judge.
Welcome to Midlife Catalyst, a place where ordinary people share extraordinary stories of doing life differently. I'm Amanda Younts, and today's guest has a lot to offer in some of our favorite topics as far as transformation, intuition, resiliency, and rebuilding your life at any age or stage. Naomi Cao is a dynamic speaker, certified NLP practitioner, and the divorce coach and strategist, known for her powerful story of resilience, reinvention, and rebuilding after separation. With a background in healthcare and over 7 years of experience supporting men, women, and families through challenges of divorce, Naomi brings a grounded, compassionate, and practical approach to every stage of the journey. In her keynote speaking, she takes audiences on a transformative journey from overwhelm to empowerment through compelling storytelling, mindset coaching, and practical tools. Naomi is here today to tell us that split happens, but you can heal and come back stronger. Naomi, thank you so much for joining us. And I just have to start with, how are things down under?
Well, it's in the middle of winter in Australia at the moment, and we've got some massive storms at the moment. So last week when we spoke, it was nice and sunny and beautiful. Today, it's windy and, you know,
split happens, and so
split
does
happens.
weather. Yes.
That's right.
I am all too familiar with the weather happening. But Australia, for those that don't know, is number one on my bucket list. And so I am just immediately drawn to hearing all things Naomi has to share with us.
I'm so excited to be on the show. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here and being willing to share your story with us. And quite a story it is, and a journey you've been on. And so really start from the beginning of how we got to split happening.
Oh, where do you want to start? Well, I'm Vietnamese-Australian, so I came over to Australia when I was 4, and my parents came to Australia by boat. We escaped Vietnam after the Vietnam War. My dad was in the Air Force on South Vietnam. And when the Americans lost the war with us South Vietnamese, my dad was imprisoned for 2 years. And after that, he didn't think that we would be able to stay in Vietnam because, you know, he had a daughter, and so we had to escape Vietnam. He didn't leave. He didn't want to live in the communist regime. We escaped by boat, you know, it was 3 nights and 2 days at sea, where we were robbed by Thai fishermen pirates 8 times, and it was just a harrowing experience. The only person who could actually swim on the boat was my dad. And I think he could only do like the doggy paddle. It wasn't even, you know, so if the boat had sunk, you know, we would have all perished. We ended up in Australia in 1980. So I guess that was the first split, I guess, from my life.
Right.
It was a cultural split. And, you know, we had to come over to Australia. I didn't know how to speak English. My parents both could speak English, but I went to school and I think I only remembered saying yes or no and not being able to really understand what was going on. and picking up English as my second language. And then, when you're actually learning a new language when you're young, you tend to pick it up very quickly. And then one day I just realized I could speak and understand English. I don't know what happened in the transition, but kids are very resilient. Fast forward a little bit, and I grew up and became a pharmacist. And I worked as a pharmacist for a few years before I met my husband. We got married, and I thought we were happy. We definitely weren't fighting, and we've got three kids. And then in 2017, out of the blue, he announced that he wanted to separate. And that just turned my world upside down. I didn't know there was so much uncertainty at that time. Both of our three kids, oh, like three of our kids go to private schools, and it was like, what happens to their schooling? Who do they live with? We live in Sydney, in Australia, and I think it's in the top 10 most expensive cities to live worldwide. And so it was really scary for me because I had given up my pharmacy career and was raising kids. At the time, I did have a part time business where I looked after kids' education and kids' coaching. So it was very overwhelming, very confused. There was a lot of questions that needed to be answered. When he announced it, it was 2 days before we were scheduled to go on holidays, or as I think you guys call it, vacation, to visit his mum who had progressive dementia. And it was with my family, my mum, my dad, my sisters, and their family. There was about 13 of us, and we were about to go on holidays on Sunday, and he announced it on Friday night. While I was folding laundry and watching, of all shows, Survivor. So it was quite, it was like a punch in the guts.
Yes.
And yeah, and I mean, I can laugh about it now because I can sort of like see the different elements of it. But at the time, I just remember it was just so much overwhelm and such shock. And what followed in the months after 2017 was unraveling a lot of his life that I didn't expect. Realizing there was a lot of things that I couldn't control. And also, I went into a typical mum protective mode, and to the point where I just thought, how do I protect the kids? And how do I protect their stability? And how do I make that happen?
And at the time, how old were your kids?
Yeah, so my children were 12, 10, and 5. So I've got two older boys. One was in grade 6 and the other one was in grade 5, and my daughter had just started kindergarten. So it was really challenging because it's really, it's one of those things that I just remember the important moments, and there was a lot of blurriness as well looking back. And I think it's our brain trying to survive all the time. So it picks out significant parts, and I remember just going a little bit on autopilot. I know I gotta clean, I know I gotta cook, I know I gotta drive the kids, I know I gotta remain sane. And there's so much of it about keeping our emotions in check in front of the children, so that my anxiety didn't rub off on them as well. So,
So after you get over the initial shock, which I
Yeah.
have to ask, did he expect you all to go on the holiday? I
Well,
mean,
I did. Yeah, we
I
did.
that like
We did. And that was the thing I just didn't understand is that
right.
he announced it on the Friday night, and we were scheduled to fly out on Sunday, and he expected us to be okay. And so while we were away, we did end up having a discussion that turned into a heated argument. And I couldn't understand it, and I tried to make sense of it. And it was, when did you decide this? Is there another woman? Is because, like these things go through your head. And the month before, I had been so busy organizing our children's birthdays that I didn't pay attention to the bank accounts, and he had actually frozen, well, he stopped money coming to our joint account, and that was the account that we use for everyday living. And I just didn't notice, I didn't pick up on the signs because as a mum, I was so busy. I was organizing the birthday parties. I was running my business. I was doing the books for his business as well. So he's a doctor and he's a specialist, and I was, keeping tabs of his books and his accounts. So I wasn't really paying attention to our personal joint account, and he had actually stopped all money coming into that account, and I didn't notice. And I think that was the hardest part, is that all these things were premeditated and calculated on his part. There was no civil conversation. It was just lockdown of the accounts, tell Naomi, get her to sign some papers, which I did. And then we went on holidays, and the papers that he got me to sign were shares that were under my name. So he got online, he liquidated over $500,000 worth of shares while we were away on holidays, so that I didn't have access to computers or anything because we were on holidays and we were supposed to be enjoying ourselves. In the meantime, he was just selling shares behind the scenes. And I think this is the thing that really I struggled with, was because I didn't think I was a dumb person. I thought I was, like, I'm an educated woman. I had access to the accounts. I knew where the money comes in. I knew when the money comes out. But, it's just one of those things that in a split second, of all the women who previously said, I didn't realize he was doing this, I became one of them. And I think that that's the hardest thing to reconcile in your logic brain, just to say, this is who I am, and this has happened to me. So you think there are so many more women who put 100% faith in their partners, and you can see how it all can turn so quickly.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
And
So, yeah.
you think you know someone. I mean, you are literally living with someone, you share children with someone. Yeah. This is
Yeah.
just beyond fathomable to
Yeah.
me. Like
It's,
I just can't even understand the human aspect of this. Like there is
we were,
no human
that's
to
right. Yeah.
this.
We were together for 17
Yeah.
years. And I don't know. I just think that I deserved, or the relationship deserved, a conversation, that if it was taking a turn and if those dramatic events were going to follow, that there would be a discussion on how things would look like. He was making a lot of money, and he was able to sustain our lifestyle. And I was, working my business, and I was earning 30,000, and his income is about 600,000. So there is a huge discrepancy. And, during when we were married and had kids, I would often say, I'd like to go back to work full time or 1 day a week or 2 days a week. And he would often say to me, but Naomi, you really do enjoy spending time with the children, which was true. And if you actually if you went back to work, your pharmacy pay for a whole day's work is equal to 1 hour of my work. So from a economic point of view, it made sense. I enjoyed time with the kids. I enjoyed being a mom. I don't like, I don't. No, I do like running around and driving them, and and supporting their needs. And so that was easy for me to really go, yeah, I agree
Yeah.
with that.
Right.
You're right. I do like being a mum. You're right. I do enjoy doing all these things with kids. I love taking them to play group and music groups. And so, yes, okay, I will stay at home. But then what it was financially crippling is not the word, but it financially stunted me
Yeah.
because I didn't have that financial confidence that I did have when I was working full time, because my contribution to the family is more non financial as opposed to financial.
Right.
So we did have a discussion on holidays, and it escalated, and my son heard it, us arguing, and he woke up and he said, "Will you two stop fighting already?" And I said, "Oh my God, how much did you hear?" And he said, "I heard everything." And so then I thought, again, I went into, okay, how do I fix this? How do I fix this? Got him back to bed. The next day, the two boys, the older boys, woke up and we spoke about it, and, acknowledging what he heard. I didn't want to lie to my children. And I said, I know you heard some things last night, but don't worry, when we get back to Sydney, Mum and Dad will go into counselling, and we will try and fix this and see and work it out. Because divorce, even though it's so common these days, it's still one of those topics that's taboo for religious reasons, cultural reasons. There's still that shame that overhangs divorce. So, I went back to Sydney. I did try to engage in counsellors. In the counselling sessions, he wasn't very, he didn't contribute much. He just sat back and listened. I think it was just another thing he needed to tick on his box to make sure, yep, we did counselling. And then something wasn't right, and I had that gut feeling, that intuition that a lot of women do feel, but we sometimes you just think it doesn't seem right. Things are not adding up, but you don't have the information to pinpoint what it is exactly. So we went to second counselling session. We came back, and he said to me, "I'm going to stay somewhere overnight." And I'm like, "What do I tell the kids?"
Right.
And he said, "Just tell them I'm on call or something." And so I said, "Okay." I With the specialist doctor, there are high rates of suicide, so I was really concerned about his mental health.
Sure.
So, and his behavior was really erratic and really strange. So and he said that he went to our doctor, our family doctor. So I thought, I'm gonna call them. So I rang up our family doctor and I said, my husband's acting really strange. I know he said he went to see you, and I don't need to know the nature of the conversation because of the patient confidentiality, but he's acting really strange. What should I do? And the doctor said to me, "Naomi, you need to stop right there." And I'm like, "Okay." He said, "He didn't come in to see me. He didn't come in to see me at all. And so I don't know what to tell you." So then that was the first kapow in my guts. And then I'm thinking, The money that went, because I saw by now I had discovered the sale of the shares. Then I saw the money move from the different accounts, but it was shut down. I didn't have access to them. So I rang up the bank and I said, my bank account's acting really strange. I can't seem to withdraw the money or transfer the money. And he said, oh yeah, your husband locked it down. And I said, excuse me, what do you mean? And he said, your husband locked the accounts and it needs dual signatures to withdraw anything. And I'm like, when did this happen? So he gave me a date and it was about a week ago. And that was when we actually came back from holidays. So he rang up the bank. Then what I ended up happening was I didn't have access to money. I had $2,000 to my name. And when he actually told me this, I sort of like, I rang up the doctor, I rang up the bank. He comes home from school from picking up the boys. And I said, can we just go for a walk? And we went for a walk. And I said, how's your mental health? And he's like, oh, I went to see the doctor and, he gave me a plan for me to see a psychologist. So I said, yeah, about that. I rang up the doctor's surgery and you didn't go. So he looked at me and he said, well, I did have intention of going. So I said, right. He said, the other thing is, I just found out you've locked down the bank accounts. So he looked at me and he said, you know what, Naomi? You'll do, am I allowed to cuss?
Oh, yes, because I'm about to. This is like making me so angry.
So he looked at me and he said, Naomi, you'll do fucking fine out of this divorce. And in that moment, I just felt so betrayed because here I am trying to think, okay, I'm trying to fix our
Right.
marriage.
Yes.
But if you're going to actually go down this path, I really wanted to be amicable because I've seen divorces where kids' behaviors manifest into violence and people going spiraling. And I did not want that for my children.
Right.
So I just stood in the street like I felt like I'd been punched in the guts. So I looked at him and I said, are you having an affair? And he turned around and he said to me, are you having an affair? And I was just like, what?
Right.
So let's rewind it a little bit back.
Yes.
So when we were up in Queensland visiting his mum, I take the dogs to the dog park and I have a social group of friends. And in that group of friends, there was one man who reached out when I was holidaying up in Queensland and he said, oh, Naomi, we haven't seen you down at the dog park for a while. How you going? Blah, blah, blah. And I said, not good. My marriage is falling apart, blah, blah, blah. And we had a chat and he said to me, do everything that you can to fix your relationship because it's expensive breaking up. So I'm like, yep, I'm trying, man.
Right.
I'm even trying to turn on the sexy moves and everything. And he jokingly said, hell, if your husband's not gonna fuck you, I would. Do you know what I mean? Like in
Right.
jest.
Yeah.
And that was it. There were no crossing of boundaries on my part. And he had access to my Facebook Messenger. So he saw those messages. So he flipped it and said, are you having the affair? And I'm thinking, are you for real? Like, I don't even have the time. I don't even have the
Right.
headspace. I don't have the mental load. I've got 3 kids that go to school on the other side of Sydney. So I'm driving them to school. I'm working. I'm cooking. I'm
Right.
cleaning, I'm doing all those things. The last thing on my mind is another man.
Yeah.
So that was just, and I just couldn't believe it, right?
Right.
So he said he was going away that night, and we went back home. After we went for a walk, we went back home, he had already packed up his stuff and put it in the car, and he said, "Oh, I'm off to work," to tell the kids. So I remember that night, and he went, and I was like, I don't know if his mental health is still okay. What do I do? Do I message him? He didn't tell me where he was going, where he was staying, anything like that. So I sent him a text and I said, "Where are you staying? Are you safe?"
Hmm.
And he responds, "Yep, I'm fine. I'm safe. I'm staying blah 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 hotel." So I text my sister and I said, "Look, he's staying at blah 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 hotel." And she didn't actually come forth with this information because she didn't want me to panic. But years later, she said to me, "Mate, Naomi, that hotel doesn't exist anymore. It operates under a different banner." So she knew from that point he wasn't lying. He wasn't truthful.
Right.
So that was a Monday night. And then he didn't come home on Tuesday. And then he stayed away Tuesday night as well. And then I just texted him on Tuesday night and I said, "Are you actually coming home? Because the kids are getting, like, what do I tell the kids? Like,
Right.
you've been on call before." And he said, "Oh, yes, I'm coming home Wednesday morning." So I'm like, okay. So Wednesday morning, I get up, do the school lunches, everything. He waltzes into the house at 6 o'clock in the morning, fresh as anything, as if nothing happened. The kids come down, get ready for school. He's like, "Good morning, kids." And I'm like, who is this? It's like
Right.
Jekyll and Hyde, right?
Right.
So then he's like, "Well, yeah." And then I'm thinking, is he coming? Is he going? Did he had his like little retreat and he's okay now? Like, what's the story? But again, my gut was saying, something's not right, Naomi. Something's not right.
Hmm.
So we continue on for a couple of days. And then again, things were not right. And I'm just like, I think he's hiding stuff in his car. And I ran the gas down on my
Hmm.
car. And I'm trying to sort of like do the English and Australian and American English.
Yeah.
And so then what happened was he took our eldest son to sports and he came back and I said, "Look, my car's running low on petrol. I'm taking your car to go to a family barbecue. Would you like to come?" And he's like, "No, I don't want to come." So I said, "Okay." So I jumped into the car and I didn't realize I had my car keys as well. So I said, "Oh, by the way, can you fill up the petrol in on my car?" And he was like, "Yep, sure, no worries." As I'm driving down the street, he's like, "You need to get back here, blah blah blah." I'm like, "Why? What's wrong? What's wrong?" And he's like, "I've lost my wallet, you know." And I'm like, "Okay." He demanded that I turn the car around. He goes back and I'm like, "There's something in his wallet that he doesn't want me to know. There's something in the car that he doesn't want me to know." Anyway, I turned back. He looked in the car. The wallet wasn't there. And that's because I saw the wallet first and I hid it. So we go to the barbecue. I pop up the boot and there was a bag inside and it had clothes and it had the children's birth certificates and everything. So I'm like, okay, he's taken these documents for something. Then I looked into his wallet and I saw a envelope that said that he had a new apartment. He had taken out an apartment and I saw all the receipts where he started buying um, washing machines, dryers, beds, all those things. So then I'm thinking, he set up a new apartment. And I saw the address of the new apartment. I looked it up. And he had taken out the apartment a month before. So then I'm like, okay. So at home, he was, trying to start fights so that I could actually say, "You know what? Get out of here." Then he could actually go to the kids and say, "Mommy kicked me out."
Right.
And so, but I was trying to save the marriage, so I didn't act on those things. And what ended up happening was that night we came home, and I said to him, "So have you found a place to live? You've been threatening to leave. Have you found a place to live?" And he looked at me and he said, "Yeah." And and then he said, and I said, "Can I have the address?" And he said, "Yep, sure." And he gave me the address. So I look it up on my phone in front of him. And I said, "You know what? It's amazing the information you find on the internet these days." I said, "You're paying $850 rent a week. You've taken out this apartment for a month now. I want you to move out by the end of the week." I said, "The children will go out for the day with my family, but I said, I want you to pack up your stuff. I want you to move your stuff to your new place. On Sunday night, we'll go and we'll have dinner with you and show the kids where you are living so that they know that you're safe. And then they'll say goodbye and then we'll work out schedules."
Mm-hmm.
So I was trying to stay very calm
Right.
and take the power back. Months go by and I get a lawyer, and the lawyer's $600 an hour. And I'm thinking, how do I afford this? On 30 grand a year, I wasn't sure whether I was getting child support. The children were in private school. I don't even know how I was paying for, groceries. So I get a lawyer, and the lawyer's just this really nice gentleman, and he's really calm, and he wants to actually work things out amicably, except my husband's lawyer was very volatile, very inflammatory, and wanted, the kids to
Right.
go and stay with him 50% of the time. And it was on his terms. And at the time, I felt really disempowered because I was like, he's holding the purse strings. He'll give me whatever I needed, in order to maybe survive, and I have to conform to what he actually wants me to do in order for me to get this. It was like a real power struggle for me because on principle I knew that the kids weren't coping. And then I just think, do I trade up my children so that I can be financially okay? Like, it was a real struggle, right?
Right.
But my daughter at the time, she was 5, she was regressing, she was bedwetting again. And that's a sign of stress for kids.
Mm-hmm.
My
Right.
children were starting to play up in school, and so I just thought it was really hard. And then I thought, you know what? No, I'm not going to dance to your tune. And so I got on the defense. And I remember having this discussion with my lawyer, his lawyer, and him at the round table discussion. And she was pressing. And I said, you know what? Your client might have actually been planning this all in his head and mentally he's checked out of the family, but we're still trying to catch up. I've only found out about this a couple of months, and our children are just catching up, so they're not emotionally there. And we have to do it based on the children's timeline. We can't just rip them up and just say this is what happens and this is your new home now, and there is a transition and your client needs to work with me. She was like, "No, if you don't agree, we're going to cancel this appointment, blah, blah, blah." And I'm like, you know what? If you want to cancel and walk out, that's fine. That's your prerogative. But we're here to talk finances. So in the end, we just, that fell on its head. We didn't progress. And by this time, it's been a couple of months. We've been to mediation a couple of times, and I've racked up $12,000 in legal costs.
Right.
And I just thought, this is not sustainable. At
Yeah.
this rate, my children are going to be eating the bricks on the wall. Do you know what I mean? Because I couldn't afford
Right.
food.
Yeah.
So then I just thought, okay, I need to advocate for myself. There has to be a better way. A girlfriend of mine, she said, "I've got this lady who's studying law. She went through and she really thinks that you can self-represent in court." And I said, "Are you crazy? I'm not a lawyer. I have no
Yeah.
idea what I'm talking about." She said, "Yeah, but you know your case." So I got rid of my lawyer And then I decided I'm going to deal with all my legal proceedings. And I didn't know how to do things. And then I just said, okay, I'm going to set up a support group for women going through the family court, as if it was like a study group. And I would actually say, let's support each other. So it started off with a group of 10 women. And then in about a year, we grew to about 25. And in that period, these women started sharing their stories. And me being me, I always thought, oh, have you thought about saying it slightly different, using different words, but essentially meaning the same thing? And they said, oh, no, we haven't. And I said, that your financial stuff, have you tried this? And have you tried? And I found myself naturally project managing or case managing these individual people. And what we found was that when I started to do that, some of the things that they were advocating for had changed. And so I just thought, maybe I'm onto something.
Yeah.
And we ended up also taking a trip overseas. And at this particular time, my mum's family lives over in Belgium, and I had a conversation with my uncle. Sorry, it's my dog popping up.
No, we're real life here.
And so I had a conversation with my uncle, and I said, you know what, I did everything that I could possibly do, and he was, he just didn't want our family. And
Right.
my uncle looked at me and he said, Naomi, you had apples, red apples and green apples, and your husband just wanted oranges. And it was just so simple,
Right.
but it was one of those moments that you go, oh my God, you're right. It doesn't matter what I do. I just didn't have what he was looking for. And that's not wrong on anybody's part. Do you know what I mean? Like, I guess there's been times when we've wanted a cappuccino, and we might get a latte or whatever, So I understood that, right? So, yeah, the months that ensued, I ended up having this support group of women, and I learned so much. And what I did learn was I advocated for myself. And I ended up taking him to court, to family court, to resolve our matter because we couldn't get anywhere with discussions. We ended up going, and I took him to court. I faced his team of lawyers and barristers. I didn't have any legal jargon, but I presented the facts to the judge. And at that time, the children needed to stay in their homes and they needed to stay in their school. That was my biggest drive.
Right.
So their biggest stability was for them while my world behind the scene was crumbling, I wanted to keep theirs as stable as I could. And that meant for them to stay in their homes and for them to stay in their schools. In the end, I ended up settling out of court, but it took us, close to 2 years to do that. And in the process, I ended up setting up my divorce coaching business. And today I help men and women through their journey, and it's helping them, with their overwhelm, with their anxiety, understanding their processes a lot better, and so that they can actually come out the other end with some clarity, some confidence about what they would like to do with their new life, and to embrace that change. So that is my journey.
That is so remarkable. Just the strength and resilience to use such a hard situation and life experience to now empower you to help other people. Like,
That's right,
that's
yeah. It's been a journey, but
yeah.
at every journey, I just, through it all, I forgot to tell you that my daughter had her 6th birthday, and which was like about a year after we had separated. And she said to me, Mum, I really want to have a superhero party. And I said, okay, sure. And at the time, I didn't have a lot of money. And I ended up saying to her, I looked up on Amazon and I got myself a Wonder Woman outfit and I wore it with her. And to me, putting on that costume was sort of like saying, you know what? I think out of all of this, I just want to be my children's superhero. I wanted to be somebody that they could look up and say, you know what? In the face of all this adversity, that mum did all these things to keep us stable, and she's our hero.
Yeah.
Sorry, the dogs are wrestling.
No.
So, real life as you
Yes,
can get.
it is real life, and it happens. But your daughter and your kids will remember that
Yeah.
forever.
Yeah.
I
So,
mean, it didn't need to be an extravagant party to make such an
no.
impact and memory for them.
No, no, not at all. And the little car that I did inherit, it was, due for an upgrade. So I went in and I traded that car in and I got myself a pickup truck. And I took them camping, and we'd been
Yeah.
on holidays, to Disney World, to Florida. We've been over to Europe, and they come back and they go on this camping trip, and they said to me, Mum, that was the best trip ever. And that was just music to my ears, because kids do just want us to be in the moment. So I was able to take them camping and they had a great trip. And from that moment, I just thought, you know what? My life I had to let go of the previous life that I had and really embrace this new life and what my new journey was going to be. I did a whole heap of new things as well. Like I picked up capoeira, which is a Brazilian martial arts. And, at 44 at the time, I learned how to do a cartwheel
Oh my gosh.
and I cartwheeled all around. So every single time we go on holidays, I do a cartwheel at a really memorable or tourist attraction, and I get my kids to take a photo, and they're like, "Mum, you're embarrassing us." So I've got a photo of me doing a cartwheel in Times Square, a
Yes.
cartwheel of me in Washington, DC, a cartwheel of me at Tokyo Disney, and I got in trouble for that cartwheel because it was dangerous. Well,
Oh
they said
gosh.
I could have slipped and fall. But yeah,
Living
so
on the edge.
living on the edge.
Yeah.
But yeah, a couple of things I did, come out of it was that I ended up working on my split framework, which is
Yes.
a journey that I take people on, and S stands for self care. And that's something I failed to do when I was living in my marriage, and I lost my sense of self. I was a wife for 17 years, I was a mum for 12, and I really forgot about me. I really forgot, to look after me, to exercise, to eat properly, and so I really decided to do those things for myself. P for putting things into perspective. And I worked with all these women who were having to deal with domestic violence, drug and alcohol abuse, and in some situations, child safety concerns. And I was lucky I didn't actually have to face those issues. So it really put things into perspective for me. And I found that helping others through little things really gave me perspective on my life. Then L was for letting go, which was letting go of my previous life and embracing what I have now and looking in the present and going, okay, these are the things that I've got now. How do I actually move on with that? I was finding my own independence, finding things that really gave me joy, things that I could, and my biggest thing was I really wanted to make the difference in other people's lives. I'd worked in pharmacy and making difference in people's health and working with children, and now it was just another part of my journey where I just think I felt I needed to help a lot of single parents. And, out of it all, I ended up finding a single mums hub, Sydney Single Mums Hub, a Facebook group now that's about 800 women. I set up a Sydney Friends group because I found that it wasn't only women who were feeling disconnected, but men as well, when their relationships split up, that we do lose our friendship networks. And it could be, friends from school or friendship that the couples have actually gained. And people choose sides, they choose the husband or the wife or one partner over the other. And so I've set up a Sydney Friends group, and we've got like 1,500 people in that group. And what we do is we get people to socialise again. We organise events, get them out, enjoy meeting people again. And there was, through it all, we also went through COVID as well with lockdown. So there was a lot of people who were getting social anxiety, getting back out of there again. But it only takes one person to say, hey, I want you to come to this event because I want you to meet new people. And if we can get one person to, well, like we hold one person's hands just to get them to a new show, invite them to an event, to introduce them to new people, it makes a difference. And that one person who was introduced to the new event will feel like they want to do that, paying it forward.
Right.
So
Yes.
it's been really successful and people are connecting again. So people finding their different levels of independence. We've got people in the group who were ex-substance users, and because they've got the connection again, they don't feel the need to resort to
Yeah.
alcohol or to any other
Yeah.
substances, right?
Right.
And then the last bit, T for in split, is to thrive.
Yeah.
And that's, what I'm doing now is spreading that positivity and paying it forward and helping wherever I can. So yeah.
What an incredible story. And just the positivity. I mean, it's something, a lot of people put acronyms out there, frameworks, but you radiate
Oh, thank you.
that you are thriving.
Yeah.
You really are. And it's obvious that you took a really hard life experience and have turned that perspective. I think that's the key, that perspective into it's not going to destroy me. I'm going to take this and
Yeah.
thrive.
Yeah. And I think that that's they're like I said to you earlier in the show, there's so much stigma associated with
Yeah,
single mums.
right.
And you hear so many stories about kids needing dads and mums and how that all sort of like fit in together. And I think the hardest thing for me is sort of like going through that journey. And then what ended up happening was my ex-husband just didn't want to fight for the kids anymore. He just let go. And which was really sad because there was times where I said, "Come on, kids, you need to go see your dad," and you know, and the kids would look at me and they said, "Mum, if he wanted to see us, he would have actually stepped up."
Yeah,
And that was the thing that I also learned was that I can't speak for somebody else.
right. Yeah,
They have to do the work as well, and it was something that it's hard to accept because we a lot of the times how we react to situations is we put ourselves in the other person's shoe how we would react and then we say why did that person do
yeah,
that, right?
exactly. Oh,
And
yes.
so a lot of things I've learned, even through Mel Robbins podcast, letting it go and let them is yeah, we have to do that
Yeah,
in order to move on.
right. And that's the key is ultimately split
Split
happens.
happens.
Be it divorce, relationship, job,
Friendships, yeah. Jobs, yeah.
friendships. Yeah, especially, at this age and stage of life. And we've got to we've got to move forward and just let everyone kind of stay in their lane, as I say. Let
Yeah,
them take care of themselves
I love
and
that.
you take ownership of yourself,
That's
right?
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And really, yeah, really just embracing that and really taking care of ourselves. And what is it that we actually need as well? Because I think
Right.
so often once you become a mum, you always think, what do my kids need? Are they hungry? Are they cold? What does that person need? What does my partner need? And you forget about yourself. What is it that you actually need? And one of the questions that I do ask in a lot of people who start off with their journey with me is that if we were to put everything aside, what is it that you want out of this? You know, and they often tell me what they want because, and sometimes it's providing that space for people to say that and giving them permission, I guess. So many times we always think if we actually say what we want, we're actually being selfish, but it's not.
Right. Right.
You know,
Because
it's
when you don't say it, that's when your own resentment and frustrations just build.
totally, totally. Because, yeah, you had that chance. You could have actually said what you wanted. And it could be so little because, yeah, I think we put too much emphasis on that, thinking that it's selfish if you actually say what you want, Amanda,
Right.
when it's not true.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. And so much of that, like you said, we have to relearn in midlife. Even if there isn't a divorce, your kids ultimately are going to grow up, they're going to leave the house and go out on their own. And then you're reforming. What do I want? I don't know. I've been
Yeah,
a mom for so long or a
that's right.
parent for so long
And it was
that,
really interesting last night. Even last night, I had a conversation with my son who's now 20 and he's at university. And he was talking, and he's doing engineering, and he's talking to me. I'm doing mechanical engineering, and and if I change degrees to a different type of engineering, it might prolong me by 1 year. And it was really good to see him have this conversation with me because it was so important that I sat in that space with him and also remind him that he's 20.
yeah,
Even if he switches degrees and it prolongs it by 1 year, in the broad scheme of things, it doesn't really matter.
right,
And and if he wants, I mean, he doesn't know, he can still do it this year and continue on his degree and change later, and it will still be okay. That he doesn't have to make these decisions right now.
right.
It doesn't have to be. It's not going to change your life. And my daughter, she pikes up and she said, "See, mummy, she did pharmacy, and she's not even practicing as a pharmacist." So they do,
Yeah,
kids really see what we do.
mhm,
It's not our
yes,
words,
right.
it's what we do. And that's probably a really good take home message, I think.
Absolutely. And what they are seeing from you is Wonder Woman. And that is so amazing. So, where can people find you? That your groups and to
Yes.
connect with you?
So I haven't expanded to North America yet, but I plan to.
Yes.
um, but people can actually look for me on www.naomi, so NAOMI CAO.com.
Okay.
So, and I do coaching and I can do coaching worldwide
Mhm.
because it is about general principles. I don't know about the intricacies of family law in each country or each state, but the overall support that I can actually provide for
Right.
people is it goes across oceans
Right.
and
Yes.
countries, and so I can work with you on your coaching needs.
Well, I love it. And we have listeners from all over. And I think, like you said, it doesn't matter where you are, the human experience and connection and community is so key,
Yes,
regardless of those oceans or boundaries.
that's right.
So, everyone, look up Naomi and thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your story with us. I am just amazed by your resiliency and your strength and your super Wonder Woman powers.
Superpowers.
Yes, I love it.
Thank you.
All right, thanks.